wrong move, I'ma let out the big shoes, check out the crease. Blow like I'm Bigfoot, step on the beat. Make a man's run till he step out the cleats. When the whole place scream, gotta get out there.
I'm gonna show you the key approach I've taken this year that has totally upgraded my productivity. I used to feel really behind, like everybody else was passing me by in life, and no matter what I was doing, I couldn't move the needle. I couldn't actually make real progress. Sometimes I still feel like this, but this 4-step framework that I'm about to show you in this video is what I always resort back to when I'm in a rut, and it has completely changed how I get back to making consistent progress. One thing that's in common with all of the moments in my life where I've locked in and put my head down, made real progress, is that I had clarity on my goals. Goals give direction. Direction is the biggest offset to anxiety. So the first step is to regain clarity on your goals. When you're not hyper clear on the destination you're working towards, it makes it really hard to know what your priorities are. And when you don't know what your priorities are, you start to do a lot of filler actions. Filler actions are tasks that you do to make you feel productive, but you're not actually getting anywhere. You start to clean your room or the whole house. You check your email and Slack a bunch, way more than necessary. You all of a sudden start to organize your wardrobe. You have this ambiguous anxiety because you don't really know what you should be doing. And so you waste your time doing things that don't truly benefit you, but just make you feel productive. The actionable step that I'm gonna have you take with this is write down your goals. I don't care if you've already written them before. Rewrite them out. And I don't want you to just rewrite them, but I want you to feel them. I'm not trying to sound wooey or anything, but I want you to gain an emotional connection with your goals. In the book Inner Size by John Assaraf, he talks about when you emotionalize your goals, it starts to seep into your subconscious. And once it seeps into your subconscious, it becomes infinitely easier and more natural to stay focused and make progress. Because the much faster part of your brain that works all of the time and can process things way quicker, your subconscious, is geared towards your goal. So meditate in your goals. Visualize yourself achieving them and what it took to get there. And then naturally, you'll start to regain this feeling of direction. Rewrite your goals so you can keep them at the forefront of your mind. Once clear on your direction, we can get into the meat of this video, the reason that I was actually excited to make this video. How do we get to our destination in the most effective manner possible? There's a single technique, a single principle here that I'm gonna share with you that is going to change everything. And you see this principle amongst a bunch of successful people who talk about its efficacy, how effective it is, like Jordan Peterson or Tim Ferriss in his book, The 4-Hour Workweek, Chris Williamson, etc. And so here, if I could have you walk away from this video with one nugget of information, it would be this. The most substantial amount of progress doesn't come from just putting in more hours. Everybody has the same amount of hours, but it comes from concentrated efforts on the 20% of highest leverage activities in your domain. Elon Musk, you and I all have the same amount of hours in our day. However, Elon Musk, at least speaking for myself, has millions, billions more results, money, entrepreneurial output than I do. Except he doesn't have millions or billions times the time in his day. Clearly, it can't just be how much time you put into achieving your goals. Elon moves faster with each decision he makes. The only way to do this is by focusing on the 20% of highest leverage activities, the 20% of things that get you 80% of the results. And so what are the fundamental tasks that are required for making progress in your pursuit? If you could only focus on one specific task, in reality, it might need to be like 2 or 3, but the most narrow number of tasks. To get down 1 unit of what you need to make progress towards your goals, what would that task be? For example, I make YouTube videos. 1 unit of achieving my goal to get me closer is 1 video. To make the video, I have to make the packaging, thumbnail, title, hook, script it, film it, edit it, post it. My concentrated efforts should be towards those specific actions. I should be spending as much time as I can on getting better at those specific actions. If I do a banger job at making a good thumbnail It would have been a way better spend of my time than focusing on my channel banners or replying to comments or posting on the community page, etc. And it's not even necessarily to say that those things can't be of benefit, but simply put, they just don't produce the same results. The Pareto principle is the fact that 80% of your output comes from 20% of your input. And this is true across everything. 80% of land is owned by 20% of people, 80% of a company's revenue comes from 20% of the customers, and only 20% of words are used in 80% of spoken or written text. 20% of your efforts produce 80% of your progress. Now, it may not exactly be 80-20 in everything. There is almost always, it's just a fact of nature, an unequal distribution in the sense that a minority of actions produce the majority of results. I sort of started to experience this and figure this out a couple years ago when I realized that YouTube is a packaging game. I could make a banger video with a bad thumbnail or a horrible video with a banger thumbnail, and 70% of how that video performed would be due to the thumbnail, title, and hook, regardless of the content that follows. The content that follows still matters, especially when you're talking about like long-term brand longevity, but how the video initially performs is almost entirely due to the packaging. YouTube is a packaging game. And so recently, that's what I've been putting a lot of my effort towards, trying to concentrate and hone in and focus on getting better at packaging because it produces the most results. If I can get better at doing the thing that produces the most results, I'll get to my goal more effectively and efficiently. And this is how you're going to figure out what priorities you have and what are the next steps to take. A lot of the time I'll hear people talking about, I have this goal, I just don't know what to do to get there. This is what you do to get there. Ask yourself in your pursuit, what fundamental actions do I rely on to move the needle, to make real progress, particularly towards producing 1 unit to get you closer to your goal. These are the actions that we're going to focus on. These are the things that most people avoid, but we hold ourselves to a higher standard than most. So take this principle and expand it as much as you can. Figure out which levers give you the most leverage. Once you have identified those fundamental actions, focus your energy at getting disgustingly good at those things. Focus your consumption so that you're learning about the 20% of skills that get you 80% of the results. This is how the successful operate. The Pareto principle isn't just some gimmicky self-help technique. It's a fact of nature. And once you think about it, it makes total sense. It's so powerful. So write down the 20% of fundamental tasks that produce 80% of the results. But this principle is equally as powerful in the reverse. Odds are 80% of your suffering comes from 20% of your actions. 80% of the drama and negative social pressure comes from 20% of your friends. 80% of time wasted comes from 20% of your bad habits. And as I'm saying this, stuff is probably popping into your mind, names, habits. You probably already have an idea of the 20% of time wasters or mental health ruiners that are causing you the most suffering. It's crucial that you work towards cutting these out. Just for 1 second, just think about this with me. Think about how fast you would move in life if most of your energy was geared towards the few things that make you the most progress, and the rest of your energy was geared towards cutting out the things that cause the most suffering, the most self-sabotage, the most time wasted. You start to only focus on limiting factors and keystone skills. Think about how fast you would be moving. Think about and write out the 20% of time wasters, bad habits, bad friends, and actions that you take that cause 80% of the degradation, of the suffering, of the sadness, of the anxiety in your life. And finally, the way that you're gonna remove the 20% of things in your life causing you 80% of the suffering, let's call these your MLFs, your major limiting factors, is by doing so intelligently and effectively. There's a reason that I structured the video the way I did. If I simply told you write down your MLFs and then quit them, you're gonna run into an issue. I ran into this issue, and you might have already as well if you've tried to quit bad habits before or something. If you quit something that used to take up a substantial amount of your time, like smoking with one friend every Friday night, you drop that friend and you quit smoking, what's left is that time, that Friday night. But idle time is the devil's workshop. If you don't know how to spend this empty time, your brain is going to start grasping at stimulation. You might reach for your vice again, or you might reach for something just as destructive to fill up that time. However, after this video, if you've been following along with the actionable steps, you're equipped with 2 things: clarity on your goals and clarity on exactly what to do to to get there. So instead of just simply not doing the bad habits or spending time with that bad friend, you're going to replace that habit or that time spent with the 20% of actions that are gonna make you the most progress. The key word here is replace. It is infinitely harder to stop doing something if you don't have a purpose to throw yourself at. You need to have a purpose that is guiding you so that you can replace that time that is no longer being wasted. And remember the change that is going to be taking place in your life. You're going to rapidly start to waste less time and reduce your own suffering because you're going to be removing your MLFs from your life. On top of that, you're going to be acting with clarity on your goals and your purpose and what you're moving towards. And you're going to be replacing that wasted time with the actions that get you towards that goal the most effective way and efficient way possible. Progress is the biggest motivator. And once you get past that initial hump, you're gonna be so high on progress that you're gonna start liking the work. So just to recap, you're gonna take out some paper and you're gonna write your goals, rewrite your goals. I don't care if you've already written them, and be extremely specific and clear on your destination. This will avoid anxiety, thankfully, because anxiety causes paralyzation, because anxiety comes from a lack of definition. But then you're gonna write down your fundamental activities that cause the most progress, that you rely on to make progress. What are the actions that are the heavy lifters, the ones that you're probably avoiding, but that actually move the needle, that actually get you one step closer to your goal? Once you understand and write down those fundamental activities, you're gonna get clear on your MLFs, your major limiting factors, the few amount of things that are causing you the most amount of pain. Finally, you're gonna replace the MLFs with the fundamental activities. Because of your decision to follow through with this framework, you're going to be soon making rapid progress and everything will be better and life will be happy ever after or whatever. Of course, eventually you might have to focus on some of the stuff that's not absolutely necessary. You might say there's even a time and place for that. But this underlying principle of knowing to focus on the fundamental activities that cause an outsized return of output is what I want you to walk away with from this video. This is an extremely important framework to have in your back pocket, especially if you're ever in a slump in life and you understand the science of self-improvement. You can just run this like it's a script. You realize that the cycle of making progress can start whenever. Go regain clarity on your goals and reprioritize what actions you should be taking. The first 2 steps alone will already make a world of difference. A lot of self-improvement is just knowing which moves to make. Like in chess, a lot of chess players will memorize openers or closers, which is a series of moves that they can play when they get into a position that they've memorized. They're like, oh, okay, I'm in this position, I run this script, move these pieces this way, and I know that I'll be out on top at the end of it. This framework's kind of like that. And you know that you'll come out better because of that. I hope you enjoyed this video and that it brought you a lot of value. This is a process that I use all of the time, and that as of making this video, I'm actually running through again because I realize how impactful it is. This is a part of what it looks like for you and I to hold ourselves to a higher standard. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.